Hi everyone, it's Mr. Silbaugh here, and this is my take on Unit 8, Lesson 4. In this lesson, we're going to talk about some APIs and what APIs actually do. So let's review. APIs, they specify how objects in a document can be manipulated using scripts. So essentially these are really cool features that you can add to your web page. Dynamic HTML is HTML working with other technologies to make more dynamic web pages. And the Document Object Model, or DOM, those are standards used to describe elements or objects in a web browser. This allows you to manipulate them and change them. So first we're going to talk about the APIs. We talked about it last class, and it was just on the last slide. So the future of web development is going to be focused on APIs because of the fact that they can create dynamic web pages without the use of plugins. And so they are becoming more and more popular because they're easy to code and easy to manipulate. And they're also a very good example of DHTML. So just what exactly are APIs? So by using the trifecta, your HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript all come together in order to make a dynamic web page. In this case, JavaScript is used to access the DOM, and when they are used together, they are used to create apps and other things, programs for smartphones, tablets, gaming consoles, smart TVs, PCs, and beyond. They are used to create apps for mobile devices as well, so keep that in mind. And experts think that the future is going to be in APIs, especially with the amount of smartphones that are available and going to increase over the next few years. So what are the functions of APIs? You can use them for media, audio and video. We talked about this in the last chapter, how you can embed audio and video into your web pages. They're also used for document editing, cross-document messaging, MIME type and protocol handler registration, and they're also used for web storage. If you want a complete list, these are 5 of the main ones. If you want a complete list, you can go to that website listed there. So what about our trek into APIs? In our case, we're going to take a look at some of the basic APIs. This is not an extensive list. We did talk about some APIs last unit in the form of audio and video players, but we're going to talk about Canvas, offline web applications, geolocation, and drag and drop capabilities within web pages. This is a very basic list, and in this you are not going to be coding them yourself. You'll be given the code in the lab, and your goal is just to be able to do them, not to actually be able to create them from scratch. So we're actually going to talk about the first API today, which is the Canvas. It's an API that takes place on a web page, and it's literally a blank canvas. You can use it and fill it with graphics, animation, video, and games on the fly, and that's the key here. You don't need any particular plugin. You can just plug in the code and it will run. The W3C says that it provides scripts with a resolution-dependent bitmap canvas, which can be used for rendering graphs, game graphics, or other visual images on the fly. It is a simple pixel-based drawing that produces a bitmap image. You'll see it whenever you do the lab today. You can draw objects using JavaScript, and you can display simple drawings, animations, graphics, or graphs. You can also do some more advanced things like video games, simulations, video editing, and image configurations. You used to need Adobe Flash Player or Microsoft Silverlight in order to create these kinds of effects on web pages, but that is no longer the case. Modern web browsers have the capability to do media without the use of plugins. So the benefit here is that it uses fewer resources than a plugin, so less battery drainage and less CPU usage. And that's a big issue that a lot of us face, is that when we use an app or use a website, if it starts draining our battery, we're not going to really want to use that website anymore. And so Canvas kind of eliminated that, and so it's less drain on your battery, especially for your phone, and that's key here. When you do a canvas, it's very bland, so you need to be able to know how to use it. We're going to create a simple canvas here in the lab, but we're not going to fill it with anything too fancy today. If you are interested in doing something with Canvas, you would need to take advanced web courses in order to cover that. So the way Canvas works is you use the Canvas tag. There are only two attributes here, the height and the width, and even those can be omitted. If you do omit those, your default height is 300 pixels and your default width is 150 pixels. It is initially transparent, there's nothing in it, and you can add a border, a margin, a background, and more in order to make it visible. Please note that older browsers do not support Canvas. It needs to support the latest version of HTML5, so keep that in mind, especially if you're developing. Remember, always test in multiple web browsers. So the way that you make a canvas, you do give it an ID, and then your width and your height. That ID is important, especially whenever it comes time for you to put your JavaScript into it. Notice here that this code adds the width, the height, a style. The style in this case is a border with a 1 pixel, and it's black. So what it would do is it would develop a border around it. If it did not support it, it would display the comment instead. Your browser does not support the canvas element. However, if your browser did support it, there would be a box, and it would be a 1 pixel black border around this box. As I mentioned, you use the ID attribute to identify the canvas if needed. That's particularly useful whenever you start programming for JavaScript. It uses a DOM called getContext. That getContext allows for two types of context, 2D and 3D. This is useful whenever you are developing your JavaScript for this canvas. If you want a 2D object, you would use 2D, but if you're going to make a game or something along those lines, you would use 3D. There are built-in objects, circles, rectangles, paths, and more. However, it only supports the rectangle. Other shapes can be made using functions and path. You really have to know how to code it. You must specify the X and Y coordinates as well as the width and the height. So the only shape you can really draw yourself is the rectangle. Otherwise, you do need to know some coding programming language in order to do this. You use fill rect with the XY width and height in that order, and it draws a filled rectangle. You use stroke rect, X, Y, width, and height in that order and that layout to draw a rectangular outline. So the first one just makes a regular rectangle but with no outline, whereas the second one makes a rectangular outline. If you do this, you need to make sure that you would make your code would align so that your rectangle and your fill would not be the same code because it would be on top of each other, so keep that in mind. Clear rectangle, X, Y, width, and height, clears the area that you have selected and makes it transparent. So you can essentially layer and make it so you can have some unique designs here. You're going to make a rectangle in the lab today. So in conclusion here, APIs are a growing trend in web development. They're not going to go away, and it's expected they're going to become bigger over the next few years. Canvas is a type of API, and it's kind of like a drawing application. It's a blank canvas where you can fill in your own content that you need for your website. All right, that concludes this lesson. If you have any questions, please let me know.